All right, let's talk about your Social Security statement. This is what it would look like. This is a fictitious statement. I want to draw your attention to the right side here where you see this graph. And this, I just want to make sure you're clear on this. This is what you will be paid at the different years when you go on Social Security. And as I've said many times, what you get at 62 is going to be I usually use roughly around a 70% margin, but ultimately you're going to get about 70% less if you go early. In this case, it looks like it's closer to 80%. But just to be aware of that, right? And so, that does grow over time, and that is what you're going to get over time. And a lot of people don't know this, but you do get a cost of living adjustment on this number. I think historically I've looked at it and it's about 2.6% per year. Some years you don't get anything, some years you get quite a bit more. But 2.6% of 1,000 is roughly let's see, is roughly about $26. 2.6% of 1860, is more in the range of like $4.50, right? So, think about that a little bit. And it's an important part of the calculation. Also, if you are not 62 yet, and let's say well, you could be 68, but let's say you're 60 years old, and this number is based on your last tax year's forecast. So, for example, if my last tax year I made $60,000 a year, they're going to assume that I'm going to make that $60,000 a year up until that point. So there is some dependency on what you're currently making. And so if you suddenly at 65 have no income, it could affect this calculation to some degree. And if you want a very precise scenario analysis, I would go on, I posted it before, but I would go to look at the RSSA self-service tool. And I will post that link in the comments so that you can go do it yourself. It's totally free, and it will give you the ability to kind of do your own scenario analysis on this, right? All right, so a couple key things. You can see what your average earning, what your average earning has been as a worker. So that gives you some information there. It tells you as well what disability benefit you would qualify for. I'd highly recommend you look at some of my disability videos because they will give you some indication in terms of, how to go through the process, how likely you are to receive benefits, and those types of things. One of the things that I really like about this summary as well is it will tell you what your survivorship benefits are. So if you have a minor child, they would get 2129. If you have a spouse who's caring for a disabled child or a child younger than 16, you'd get this amount. There are some income limitations that you need to be aware of. I do have a client who every year has a job in addition to getting her benefits, and so she needs to be very careful not to exceed that amount, right? Because it will have a reduction in her in her payments. If the spouse if the person who is the earner, so this is my statement. So if I got my Social Security, if I didn't get my Social Security benefits until I was 67, or if I died before 67 and hadn't gone on Social Security yet, my spouse would get 2838 in the scenario, and my total family benefits that would be available would be 4,968. If I should pass away, there's a one-time death benefit, but that's pretty standard. And so that's good to know. And then it ultimately gives you, your Medicare situation, which is pretty standard for everybody at this point. And and it gives you sort of like, what are the qualifying events? Either I turn 65 or if I'm suffering from an end stage renal failure, then that can provide a different sort of circumstance. So that's your statement. I highly recommend you log into SSA.gov and explore that. And again, if you want more detail on this section and sort of what are the different outcomes you can have based on sort of your different forecasted income scenarios, feel free to reach out, and I'm glad